my glasses off.
Yeah, take your glasses off. Yeah.
Just remind me I have
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Yeah, like me. Okay, very good. And just spell your. I know your name, but just spell it. Your last name.
It's Altwerger.
G-E-R.
Yeah.
Altwerger. You took the gum out, right?
What?
Did you take the gum out? The gum?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Okay. Let me ask you. Let me start with a question. Why are you here for SOS? Yeah.
I'm here for SOS this year because I was a founder of SOS and was very involved in initiating this organization and getting this movement started. And even though I'm not on the steering committee this year, I'm still very dedicated to the principles of SOS. And I think it's important to meet with like-minded people and strategize together and organize together.
It seems like the corporate education reform movement has a lot of money and a huge amount of power. What do we have?
We also have power, but we have a different kind of power. We have power in the passions of people, the dedication of people, to try to build and sustain a public education system that's going to continue to be the foundation of our democracy. So the money can only do so much. People have to do the rest. And if people resist, and if people take a stand, money cannot diminish that. And so we have to find the power in our own work and in our collaboration with others to turn the tide back.
Is that a phone? I think your phone's ringing.
I'm sorry?
Just wait 1 minute. I think your phone's ringing.
My phone is ringing?
Something's buzzing.
Oh, it's because it's on vibrate. I'm sorry. I've been playing phone tag with my husband all this time. Okay, I'll turn it off for now.
Oh, just for a minute. Yeah, we'll get to some good stuff.
Okay.
I'm still rolling, so that's great. What are schools for?
What are schools for? Schools are for building the capacity of every human being in a society to bring that society to the best possible situation in which in which all citizens and all people living in that country have equal voice and have a true democracy.
So there's an element of educating kids for society, not just for jobs, let's say.
Absolutely, and I think that gets very confused because the corporate reform mentality is that we're getting kids ready for careers and jobs for the future, whatever those might be. But assuming that is the only way in which we can contribute to our country and to the society as a whole. But I actually think that a much more important service that schools can do is to help children to understand their role in creating a democratic society that is based on social justice and so forth. And not only that society, but to understand where they fit in the global society and how they can make a difference in the world and make it a better place for themselves as well as others.
Yeah. In American education, there's the John Dewey strand, and then there's the Frederick Taylor strand. What happened? I mean, how did it get so unbalanced? It seems like what we call the John Dewey strand maybe never made it into the mainstream. I don't know.
Well, I think that we were making great strides, and I think that there was a pushback. I think that the notion of constructivist learning, of children posing problems and solving problems, and active learning was really taking hold in the 70s and 80s with the whole language movement, the whole child movement. And I think that the corporate sector in this country got scared that we were going to be creating a new generation of workers that think critically, think creatively, and don't necessarily fit the goals that they have in mind for us. And if you look at what happened, I don't think it's a mistake. I think it was a very concerted decision by the National Business Roundtable and ALEC to basically stage a coup over public education and take it away from that way of thinking. I think that I don't believe in the pendulum swinging idea. I wrote an article way back called The Push of the Pendulum, because I think that there was a definite concerted decision to push back against the gains we were making in regard to a Dewey-focused education.
It's kind of interesting because I was in England a few months ago, and in the bathroom of a bed and breakfast I was staying at was a piece of writing that was attributed to Bill Gates, but I found the real source for it. It's like 10 things to tell your college graduate, and it's all pushback. It's things like, the first one is, life's not fair, get used to it. If you think your teacher's tough, try your boss. And they're all things like that, and I take upon myself to respond to them, to say, life's not fair, get used to it. Gee, glad Martin Luther King didn't feel that, right?
right.
But each one of these things, so then I found the real source of it. The real source of it was a book that was written in the 1980s by a guy named Charles Sykes, who wasn't even an educator. It's called Dumbing Down Our Kids, and he spends a whole chapter taking down Alfie Kohn, a whole chapter taking down, and it's all about, that sort of idea that, these people just want to create self-esteem schools where there's no grades, and it was a total kind of caricature of the whole child movement.
Right.
That's what those books do. But it was attributed, I thought it was interesting that it was attributed to Bill Gates, and all on the internet it says Bill Gates on it, these 10 things.
That's interesting. I wonder why they did that. I think probably, it's interesting because Bill Gates dropped out of school, and Bill Gates was in a sense a rebel, not the kind of rebel I would like to see him be, but in his own way he was a rebel. So it's interesting that they attributed it to Bill Gates, because I'm not sure he would have followed those rules himself.
No, I don't think it was his, neither would I think he would agree with all those things.
No, exactly.
I think he's actually a fairly liberal thinker.
Right. But it is interesting in this point that whoever attributed it to Bill Gates sees it as a corporate mindset and a corporate way of looking at the world, which you'd assume Bill Gates would.
But things like that always go viral because they have that sort of Cracker Barrel wisdom, that sort of like, oh, this is real kind of thing.
Well, it's like the tough love, get tough kind of way of thinking. If your teacher's tough, get used to it. And there were all those movies about the tough teachers who, in the end, the children thanked. I think that they create dichotomies between this image of the tough teacher and tough education and tough love and nurturing and developing. And you can have high expectations for kids, and you can expect a lot from them because you believe in their intelligence and you believe in their abilities, and yet be a caring human being who is concerned about that child in all aspects of that child's life. And you care about a society that nurtures that child. I think teachers have to think beyond just the kids in front of them to what it is that what is their vision for society? What is their vision for a democracy? We lose sight of that.
It's interesting because even when I ask teachers at my workshops who their great teacher was, whenever they picked like a tough one, they'd always say it with a sense that you could tell that teacher cared about them. It wasn't the toughness was just kind of their method. It was an expression of caring.
Well, toughness can be coming from love, or it can be coming from other things that are negative, like frustration, anger. And I mean, I know teachers who will actually go to the home of a child who is not performing, and not in a punitive way, but to say to the parents, what can we do to work together? And the kids are scared that the teacher's going to show up at their house. But the fact that a teacher would take his or her own time and actually go to somebody's house to see what's going on means that they love them. And love not in, you know, Paulo Freire talks about love not being it should be an empathy, not a sympathy, you know. So loving meaning knowing that that child can be more than they are and wanting to make it happen.
I'm going to drop just a simple one on how can we assess schools differently? What would you do to assess schools differently than the testing? I mean, the testing people make it like there's only one thing you can do. We don't want accountability, but we're testing. And what's true accountability look like in a school?
Well, I think that there are actually models out there that are very good where you think of a school as a community where you have a lot of peer support for each other, peer collaboration, where teachers are helping other teachers to do what's best for the child, to help that, you know, a new teacher or a novice teacher in a way that will make them more successful as teachers. You know, I believe in authentic assessment. I don't think that we can judge anybody on a single day's performance on anything. And I think that authentic assessment needs to be ongoing. It needs to, you know, look at all facets of a child. And I think that teachers are accountable for knowing their children very, very well over a long period of time and in many different dimensions. You know, I think that this term accountability has been really bastardized, because we should be accountable to the child and accountable to the child's parents and families, and doing the best job we can to take that child wherever that child might be and move them forward and to expand their horizons.
So the purpose of school to develop someone's capacity, not to simply whatever else, create a cookie cutter kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Every good teacher knows that a child's test performance may have nothing to do with that child's actual abilities and actual knowledge or learning. Or, I mean, I've known that I've been in the teaching world, I've been in education since I was 21 years old, which is a long, long time ago. And I knew that then. I knew that at 21 when we gave, you know, when I became a teacher at 21 and we gave the standardized tests in New York City, and I knew my children could read. I knew they could read. They read to me every day. And yet the test scores said something different. Teachers know their children better than anyone else if we give them the chance and the time and the tools and the decision making to find that information out.
Okay, I'm going to stop for a second. I'm just going to do a two-shot so I can pretend like I'm talking to you. It's kind of weird. I don't know if this will work.
Oh, I didn't know whether I was supposed to be looking at you or looking at the camera.
I should have told you. You can just, it doesn't matter.
I don't know who I was looking at. I think I was looking at the camera at the beginning.
I'm really bad at this. We'll do that too much. But Lisa says you're overacting. Okay, good.
That is so fun. Okay.
It's probably totally